So, what we're doing today is really focusing on loved ones that we have known, perhaps that we would like to be in contact with, or that we feel may be um, around us, or contacting us, or being engaged with us, or those that we miss since they are no longer in physical form. Whatever it is that would lead us to wanting to make some contact, wish they were here to ask these questions, or to get guidance from. Some of you may have learned from doing 23andMe or Ancestry.com or whatever, that you have some very interesting extended family that you've never heard of or didn't know about, or and have interesting lives. Maybe you've discovered a little something about them that you have something in common with. They are available to you also. Just because you didn't know them in their living years doesn't mean you're not connected, or that they don't know you. And there very well could be some connections that you could make with them if you desire that. We also tend to have guides and or angels or other kinds of spiritual beings that we fall back to, have developed a relationship with, that we have, that we want to use some of our techniques and tools to be able to reach them and ask them specific questions in ways that maybe we haven't tried before, just to offer. But if we have a relationship, whatever we're doing is obviously working. So that's really all you really need. But it's to also kind of open up the field and think of it as not necessarily in a spiritual category, but more in general, a life category of how it is that you are living your life and how surrounded you are by such love in everything that you do in all areas of your life. That you can get insights to direct yourself and access wisdom. You can also connect with authors, spiritual teachers, wise people, but maybe people who are iconic in the field of study that you've had, or in your profession, maybe iconic in your profession, that you're thinking of, that you've always felt close to, or that you've always loved. You've read their life story and you feel really connected, but obviously your lives did not overlap. Still, if you have that kind of a connection, you can access them in the same way that you do your guides, your angels, your loved ones, some of the tools that you'll hear about today. So that's the purpose of today, is to really look at all the ways that not only can you have a medium, like we are blessed to have Amy with us today, but you also can practice those accessing with yourself and for yourself. And those are ways that you can do that. It will strengthen your ability to understand everything that's going on around you, and it will come up in other areas of your life at times that you need to speak a truth, and you will know how to do it, and you'll know how to, how people say sometimes, I just channeled that just came through and I just said it and it changed the relationship that I had, using words I wasn't thinking I was going to use. That is a practice that will come by habit, and also by practice of being attuned to your heart. So that's a lot. I hope that some of that, at least, you'll walk away with today. And I'm going to now introduce Amy Hageman. Amy is a lifelong unity of Houston, specifically a member. She's been raised up in it. She is Stephanie and Dana Foy's daughter, if you didn't know that already. She is a wonderful, amazing human being. And she has actually had psychic and channeling gifts all of her life. And there's apparently also a lineage in her family that contributes to that. So she was supported and she has used it, and it's been something that has been a part of her life. She's now recently been guided to start offering herself as a medium. And this is a different thing than just being intuitive or psychic or kind of sensing things. Many of us have those gifts, and many of us practice that in some ways, and you can practice doing that. You can learn how to be a medium if you have some gifts. However, mediumship is very different. And I'm so grateful to have Amy with us today. And I am now going to let her describe in her own words some of the insights that have come from her work.
Wonderful. Thank you, Karen. Thank you. So I had a whole list of stuff that I was going to teach, but actually something happened yesterday that I thought was such a story for all of us. So I'm going to share it. So if any of you knew Cecile Etherly at the church, she and I were very close. She was my counselor for years. And in counseling together, we sort of figured out we had probably 2 or 3 past lives together. So we're very connected. And she'll come through for me in real surprising ways. So yesterday I was working on a meal plan for the week, and I got out the Unity cookbook and I was looking at stuff, and I was on this page, and I kept feeling like I was missing something. I kept looking at the top left going, no, I didn't want that recipe, and looking, and I'd be like, oh, I forgot to look at the top left. And I would look at the top left. I was like, I didn't want that recipe. And I just kept feeling like I was forgetting it. And I finally was like, okay, you keep looking at this recipe, read it. And I read, and it was Cecile. And I was like, oh, she's doing that. And as soon as I clicked, oh, that's Cecile, I had the shivers, which it's so funny. I never get those because when I'm actively doing mediumship, they just talk to me and show me things. So I don't need the shiver signal. So I almost felt like she was giving me that experience as a reminder to me to tell you all that a lot of times when we get those sort of goosebump shiver feelings, it's because we're experiencing their soul's energy with us, confirming for us. Oh my gosh. Well, thank you for letting me know that you were first cousins. Sorry, I got a direct message, but yay, that's wonderful. So anyway, so Cecile definitely sends her love, and is just laughing at what's happening right now for me anyway. I hear her laughing a lot. I'll just be driving down the road and something will happen with one of my kids and she'll just be laughing and I'll hear it, and it's delightful. But one thing I thought I would talk about in terms of connecting with spirit, since we are doing mediumship today, is that mediumship for me is a little bit different than other forms of channeling. So I sort of feel like I do 3 things. I connect with angels, spirit guides, ascended masters type, and then I sort of refer to spirit as people who have passed on. And with angels, they really are mostly free will based. So if you don't ask for help, they can't help you. Now, you don't have to literally be asking, but you have to be trusting that the universe is going to support you, or there has to be some amount of open assumption and receptivity to help for them to be able to help you. Is sort of how angels work. And a lot of times what in the past I would have referred to as my intuition, I now realize I was like, oh, that was just the angels talking to me, and I hadn't connected that together. So for me, a lot of times intuition is really just guidance from spirit. Versus spirit guides. In the work that I've done, spirit guides are the only sort of element where I don't want to say they don't respond to free will, because they do, but it's like we've given them license before we incarnate a little bit, and they help us with a specific thing. So you might have a spirit guide that's helping you write your book, or a spirit guide that's helping you create your family, whatever it is that you might have signed up for. And I actually do, of the 3 sort of types of energy that I work with, the spirit guides are the ones that are the least frequent. I mostly do angels and mediumship. But when I connect with loved ones that have passed on, it's the trickiest because they all connect very differently. And sometimes they have already reincarnated. Some people, they'll reincarnate 3 or 4 years later. They're not there very long. And sometimes they don't want to, it's not that they don't love you and they don't want to support you, but they also have their own free will. So often, if you want to connect with people, usually they will step up for you, but they don't have to. Versus if you want to talk to your angels are there, bar none. And the other thing that I've really learned and really come to appreciate, as I've done more and more mediumship, is that if there is a situation where there has been any sort of trauma, um, even, it doesn't have to be physical abuse, it doesn't have to be a big deal, but if there's been any sort of trauma, or if things ended on an uncertain tone, I always find that the spirit's always like, are they sure they want to connect? Like, I just really want to be sure before we connect. Because they don't want to trigger anything unless it's really going to be healing. So if you do have a loved one that passed on that it was complicated with, and you wouldn't really want them to come visit you in your dreams, or you wouldn't really want them to come be hanging out in your kitchen with you while you're cooking dinner, then they just will not be there. Because it's just sort of a rule, that our loved ones follow our rules and our desires. They respect our boundaries. So if you want them, they may or may not show up. But if you don't want them, then they will not be there. So just in case anybody has a situation, somebody that it didn't end well, there was some abuse there, I just don't want anybody to ever worry about like ghosts or anything that would cross a boundary, because that's not really a thing that happens. And while we're talking about ghosts, the idea that there are souls that are so unsettled that they leave behind a lot of their energy, that's super rare and like super small. Like if you ever like a haunted house thing where they're like, oh, I heard footsteps, or oh, this such and such thing, it's just like an old little imprint of energy. That's all that is. It's not an active thing. So in general, I find non-physical spiritual energy to be very loving and very boundaried. And the boundaries are often your boundaries. So if there's people you want to connect to, they may or may not come. They may have reincarnated, in which case your angels will step forward and tell me they're not here, but we can help her heal, whatever conversation she wanted to have. The angels can kind of sub in. That's the other thing I would say is, even if you want to have a mediumship reading with anybody, if there's somebody that you wanted to connect to and they're not available for whatever reason, you can still access that healing in some other way. Your angels are going to be there for you. And even if you're not a person that subscribes to angels as a thing, that's how I see them, but it's spiritual loving energy. So that's how I relate to it. But other mediums and channels will just say they, or they'll just say spirit. I see angels and that's how I work, but everybody's different. So, but really the main thing about connecting is just learning to trust it. Whether you think it's your angels or if you think it's a loved one, whether it's a smell, or if just something, if you're driving down the road and it was like a doppelganger moment, like it looked like somebody to you, or I was working with a client recently and we connected with one of her loved ones that had passed on, who had worn a certain character shirt. And later that same afternoon, the client was driving down the road and she goes, Amy, I saw the character shirt. And I was like, yeah, she's with you. So it could be anything, and you just have to learn to trust it. And Karen and I, we also talked about this too. If you have an emotional response, then it's real. I had a friend who was driving down the road, and she lives in a lower to middle class neighborhood where you wouldn't typically see like Ferraris and Porsches and stuff. And she was driving down the road one day and she was trying to make like this big decision about whether or not she was going to buy this expensive piece of property. And she got cut off by a Ferrari. And her dad was a Ferrari salesman, and her dad was a person that would have wanted her to make this investment. So she just knew it was him and started crying. And so it's just stuff like that, like stuff random that you could easily explain away, is often spirit talking to you. So it's just learning to trust. So that's what I would have to teach. I feel like most of my time I'd rather just do readings than teach. But if we have a specific question, I guess we'll do that, Karen, after you talk. We'll
Yes,
have a little bit of Q&A time before I go into readings. So
right. Thank you, Amy. She's got a lot more where that came from, a lot more to tell you. There's just a few tools that I just wanted to share with you. You don't have to have specific psychic or, intuitive abilities, but the very fact that you're interested today, and also that you are a spiritual person, you're here because of your spirituality. If you're on a spiritual journey and you're actively engaged in it, you're becoming more intuitive, you're becoming more aware, you're listening more to your heart, you're making connections in the world differently than you used to. So all of that makes us all much more accessible and able to use the gifts that we naturally have. So some of this you're already doing, but I just wanted to kind of put some tools out there for you to use to walk away with today. One is using your journal. When a lot of times when I mention journals, people just, I know, I hate using a journal. Yes, I'm not saying it's a diary. It's not an everyday thing that you have to do it all the time. I use my journal as a treasure that I keep gems in my life that I put in and write out and describe any insights I've gotten, anything that happened that's like a miracle or miraculous, or a dream that I had that it was particularly moving, something that I've learned, something that happened. I try to date it so that I know what part of my life it happened in, because I do go back and read some of it. It's ideal to title it, but I'm not that organized. I don't do it, but other people might. I also used my journal for a few years in between ministry, in between Unity of Houston and Unity of New Braunfels, where I would wake up in the middle of the night, and rather than just toss and turn and scroll Facebook, instead what I did was I would use my journal. I would just turn it on, use a flashlight to not wake up my husband, and basically put the date and time, and I would just say, what would you have me know now? With the idea that I'm addressing my guides or spirit in general. And I would do my level best to scribble something down with any kind of handwriting that I could, to just, and the words would come to me not like I speak. A lot of times they would come, mostly they were, all is well. It almost always started, all is well, everything is okay. You're thinking this, but it really is more like that. And you just want, it was angelic, angelic language and blessings and just really coming through. And for a while, of course, when I was first doing it, I was judging it. I was judging me. I'm like writing to myself. And, I was just making up all the story. What I've discovered in all of my journaling and in when I'm seeking guidance, where I would like to communicate and I've got a real problem or some information I'm trying to seek, or some understanding from my grandmother or my mother. My mother passed in 2017. I felt very complete with her passing. I really I didn't grieve very much because I had really processed so much with her that it's not about grieving now. Now it's about, I wish I could ask her that question, and then I go, duh, I can ask her that question anytime I want to. So I write with my dominant hand my question, and then I change it to my non-dominant hand and let her answer me. Sometimes I need to write it, and sometimes now I no longer need to write. I just need to be open and listening, and the words will come. And I suddenly understand what she's able to tell me. And it's really coming, it's not all I need to know necessarily, but it is what is coming through her to me. And I know this is how she feels. And does that make sense? That it would be just like if she's sitting in my kitchen, I still only get my mom's perspective. It's not universal, necessarily. But it is her and it's her love. And I can still ask my guides and I can ask others, for more details. But writing it down really helps, especially as you're training yourself to listen. And I would also say this, that once I wrote it, I would shut it, I hope, and still do. I shut it up and I don't really look at it. I can if I want to, but I usually don't because I judge it too much. And so if I put it away and pick it up tomorrow and open it again, it's not like I forgot, that I wrote something and that it's in there. But I'm telling you, when you're channeling it through and writing, you're looking at it from this side and as like the giver. And that's why I was judging some of the words because they weren't mine. I guess, I don't know, or that it just looked pompous and like it was just coming out of, I don't know, something. But when I look at it from the other side, when I'm opening it up tomorrow and I'm wanting to know, I'm wanting to glean something, I now see these words on the other side and somehow it is really speaking to me and I see the wisdom and I see how it was so not me, that really wasn't me. It was something else coming through. So I want to encourage you that a journal or anything that subs for that. And I will stress writing it with any kind of a pencil or pen or anything special. You can do it on special paper. You can do it on binder paper. You can do it on scratch paper. You can do it on anything you want. It's okay. It doesn't matter. But what helps is to really write it in script, write it or print it if you do that. But to drag a pen across a paper takes time and it lets each thought just orderly deliver and it takes you from here to there. It actually takes you somewhere. You will start somewhere and you will end somewhere. And that's the beauty of using journaling. If I haven't convinced you, that's my spiel on that. Meditation is also a great way to be connecting where you can invite your loved one or a teacher or an angel to go with you into the woods and out and sit next to a river and then sit down with them in a beautiful setting and ask questions. You can do that in your meditation. You just lead yourself there visually and just allow yourself to feel supported and loved and take it deeply in and trust it. You can ask for signs. That was the kind of thing that Amy was talking about, where, you ask for the Ferrari or a red Corvette to show up or whatever. I don't know what these fast cars have to do, but you don't see them very often and they're exciting when they show up. So, but whatever your sign is, it's okay to ask for a specific thing. It's perfectly okay. But I would support you and suggest that what you do instead to practice recognizing signs in your life is simply to say, show me a sign so that I know that I'm on the right track. I would like a sign for confirmation if you're just needing some added support. But if you don't specify, then what'll happen is you can just go about your life like you would and kind of forget about it. And when something catches your attention, the doppelganger, like Amy was saying, you saw the back of your grandfather's head. That's exactly the way he walked. It's like, I thought it was him. And then you realize that's your sign. Or, something comes up, or a beautiful butterfly that just comes and sits on your knee and just, gets up, flutters and comes back and sits on your knee. I mean, something amazing like that, then you suddenly realize, oh, that was my answer. What you need to know is that as soon as it hits you, that's it. You will feel a resonance in your heart. Notice what you feel here, not what you think. Not what you think and see, but rather how you feel. The more you notice how you're feeling, the more you can begin to trust, the more you can begin to trust your life, the more you can begin to trust other people speaking to you and the truth of what they're saying. You're going to know it here, not rationally, not rationalizing it, but practicing how it feels. And that is where you'll grow in your trust in knowing when you're really being communicated with. And the channeling will come more naturally to you. You will channel, when we say channel, meaning sometimes just a flow of words that are just in retrospect, they were perfect, and you didn't really plan them out. They just kind of came to you in the moment that you needed to speak them, and it was important. Usually it's an important message for yourself to stand up for yourself, or for someone else to hear, something that changes the situation, something that makes a stand. All of those things. You've had those experiences probably from time to time. Just know that you're always connected and you're always being guided and supported. And the more you practice being awake and alert and willing, the more likely those things can happen. You can also check in your heart for confirmation of anything that you're thinking or hearing from somebody else. Are you contracted? Is your heart kind of neutral, kind of like just kind of okay? Or is it expansive, wide open? Can you feel what a resonance there in your heart? Can you feel like, do you get chills? The chill thing is, all the way down or on your legs, or some people get them on the tops of their feet or the tops of their head or their cheeks or whatever. But whatever your signals are, physical, this is your energetic being. So you're getting energy confirmation one way or another. Yes, your dreams will tell you things. Write your dreams, put them in your journal, date them, and put as much detail as you can. Ideally, do it as soon as you wake up. I don't care how stunning that dream was. You will not remember it by lunchtime. I promise you, or you'll lose half of it by lunchtime. So you'll get so much more if you go ahead and just write it down. Just use the discipline of just stopping what you're doing, writing down as much as you remember about that dream. The details are very important because they'll turn out to be, our subconscious and those who have passed don't always use words. In fact, rarely do they actually use words. They use symbols. They use images. They use metaphor. They use signs. They use all kinds of impressions, visionary things, more visionary than verbal. So just know that that is all valid. In fact, it's probably representative of something really useful from the other side when you get it that way. Okay, I spilled it. I spilled everything I wanted to say to you right there. So that's what I have to share.